Welcome to another edition of Political Brew. I'm your host, Donovan Lynch. I'm joined by Garrett Mason on the Republican side of the coin, Ken Altshuler representing the Democratic point of view most of the time. Right?
But we're both representing the main point
Exactly.
of view.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I love this. All right, we have almost too much to even fit into one show, so let's get right down to it. Tensions are incredibly high right now between the White House and leaders in California. This after President Trump deployed the National Guard and sent 700 active duty U.S. Marines to restore order in Los Angeles amid widespread protests against the Trump administration's immigration policies. The move drew deep criticism and legal action from the state's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, and the plot thickened Thursday as California Democratic Senator Alex Padilla was shoved and handcuffed after trying to question Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and interrupting a press conference. Garrett, I'll start with you. The California leaders are saying it is heavy-handed of the Trump administration to have this large of a reaction and put this many resources, including active duty troops, to quell a protest that people are saying is less than prior protests. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think first thing I'll say is my wife is from California, and for us watching what's going on in California right now is very sad. You know, that's where she's from, that's her home, and what's happening there is really, really sad. But what I would say about this is, in regard to Senator Padilla, he got exactly what he wanted. He wanted a photo op. Put yourself in the shoes of the person assigned to protect Secretary Noem. Put yourself in their shoes. He wasn't wearing any identification. He was just screaming at the top of the lungs that he was Senator Alex Padilla, and he wanted to answer a question. Number one, that is incredible privilege for somebody to walk in there and just decide that they can start screaming at the Secretary of Homeland Security. The person protecting Secretary Noem doesn't know that, doesn't have any identifying information on, except for a polo shirt that was underneath a jacket. They had to protect the secretary. He wanted a photo op, and he got it. Very effective messaging for the Democrats.
Ken, I think this gets into a very interesting question, which is, I've seen Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, on pretty much every media outlet. I mean, he was on the Daily, he's been on every media outlet. Alex Padilla obviously making a scene. What do you say to Republican arguments, kind of like what Garrett just said, that this is just a chance for Democrats to, make a stunt, do a political stunt?
So I don't want to spend a lot of time on Padilla because he was wrong what he did. He should not have been tackled and handcuffed outside. Great photo op for Democrats, but let's not get distracted. This is not about immigration or United States safety. This is about the big, beautiful bill. Immediately you see the ads coming out from Donald Trump saying, ICE, this bill will protect ICE and let them do their work that LA is trying to stop them from doing. This is about the passage of the bill, not about immigration. Look at the George Floyd riots in LA. They didn't call the National Guard in. LA was able to handle that, and it was a much more violent situation. This was dancing in the streets, and they brought in the National Guard. And keep in mind, the governor must request, under the law, the governor must request the National Guard to be sent in. He did not do that. Donald Trump did this as a showboating opportunity to advance his agenda and once again make immigration the centerpiece of his agenda. And that's what he did.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Summer of Love, because that's what, in 2020, you had cities being burnt to the ground, federal buildings being burnt to the ground, because what you didn't mention is that the president absolutely has the authority to protect federal buildings, which they turned into a Chaz
Nobody
encampment.
was attacking this federal building.
But this is where it really comes in. What did you have going on in these protests in LA that's still going on today? People waving flags of foreign countries.
So what? That's the First Amendment.
People. That's fine.
Let
Go
them
ahead
do
and
it.
do
That's
that.
protest.
But
It's
that
legal
doesn't that look
Garrett,
like Who am I answering to here? I mean,
is that rebellion? Is that insurrection? No. January 6th was insurrection and
I
rebellion.
think a lot of Republicans, in fact, many people who voted for Trump, would say that it absolutely
Come on.
is.
It was free
And that is the
speech.
opinion. That is
It
the
was a
opinion of.
protest.
I think this gets.
Hey,
Garrett, I think this gets into a really fascinating conversation, because in 2020 you had military advisors to Trump saying, I'm not comfortable with active duty troops on our streets. This time around, very different story. I mean, Are you comfortable, and do you think Republicans are comfortable with active duty military? And of course, you're in a very specific role right now.
Yes,
they're not doing the law enforcement, but you're comfortable with this.
Yes, I do think that they are, because I think people are sick and tired of every few years when the Democrats don't get their way that they burn down a city or multiple ones.
It's politicizing the military.
So what's it about?
We don't do that in America.
What's it about? What are the protests
about? It's about the big, beautiful bill. That's what it's about.
This is
the
what
ICE raid, 3,000 arrests,
No.
mandatory. That's what they're telling ICE to do. This is about the big, beautiful bill. Has nothing to do with safety, nothing to do with immigration, nothing to do with LA.
We disagree.
But to Garrett's point for a second, Ken, I mean, you do see these images of LA. You see cars being burned, fire.
Three unpersoned cars get burned. You see worse than that in every protest, every riot. The 1970 hard hat riot in New York City that happened, followed Kent State. They went to the library of a college and beat up the students. They didn't call the National Guard in. So this is, it's all politicized. It's about politics. It's about appearances. And Donald Trump needs everyone to be scared of brown people to advance his agenda. And that's what this is about.
That isn't it.
All right, I'm so sorry. We're out of time. We're out of time. I'm so sorry. No, Garrett, you can get in one more point if you'd like.
But I think this is it. Anybody who is surprised by the fact that Donald Trump is going to deport illegal immigrants, anybody who thinks that that is a surprise was not paying attention to the entire election.
Okay, we do have to leave it there, or my producers will take this show off the air. We will be back with more political brew. It's all local from here on out. A very warm welcome back to Political Brew. I'm your host, Donovan Lynch. I'm joined by Democratic analyst Ken Altshuler, Republican analyst Garrett Mason. We've already got off to a very spicy start, I would say.
I've calmed down.
Well, you're about to not calm down.
I was getting questions from both sides for a long time, and I didn't know who to respond to. So.
His were more objective and detached.
I'd hope so. Okay, let's go to a big issue this week. After heavy pressure from Republicans, Democrats on the Judiciary Committee in the Maine legislature held a public hearing on the proposed red flag gun law. It's a ballot initiative that, if passed by voters, would allow family members of someone who is a threat to themselves or others to directly petition a judge to have their guns removed. The hearing was a preview of what is to come this fall ahead of Election Day, and notably, the Maine State Police testified against the red flag measure, calling instead to strengthen the yellow flag already in place. Ken, I'll begin with you. This was a real big fight to get this hearing, and it seems like Democrats bended the knee and gave in to Republican demands. Why do you think they did that?
Because they were stupid. There's no reason for them not to have a public hearing. This is the problem sometimes with Democrats. They're so scared of their shadows, they don't want to have a public hearing. Have a public hearing. It's appropriate, it's proper, and let people air their opinions. That's what free speech is about. I am a supporter of the red flag law. I don't care what the police union thinks or the police officers think, because I see no reason to not have every possible avenue toward getting people who are mentally ill not to have guns in their possession until properly vetted. So the yellow flag law is fine. I think the red flag law is better. But in terms of airing people's opinions, there should never, ever be a reason not to do that.
Democrats, when they announced that they would be holding this hearing, they said, we're holding this hearing in part, they were kind of like, because we're not going to play games like Republicans do. Do you think they took the high road here? And do you think Maine voters say, Democrats are...
Come on.
No, what do you say to that? I mean, it's what they said.
That they can say that all they want. They rejected three Senate orders from senators who put forward saying, let's have a public hearing. They're saying, no, we're not going to have a public hearing. No, they did not take the high road. They took the dazed and confused road. I mean, let's just be honest. Ken's right. This is the law. In 2019, they passed a law to stop this nonsense of, we're not going to hold public hearings on citizen-initiated bills. I'll be completely honest with you. That was the norm when I was in the legislature. When you had a bill that was citizen-initiated, you would just reject the public hearing and say, let it go to the people. A lot of the people just thought, the people will have this debate during the election. I look back on that. That was wrong. We shouldn't have done that. You have to have a public hearing, especially when 80,000 Mainers said, I want to talk about this.
But I still think we should not have citizen-initiated bills.
Well,
by the
that's
way.
I agree with you on that
that's,
too, but that's not what the law is, you know.
But Ken, I mean, the big headline here is that the Maine State Police came out against this. We know Governor Mills is against this.
I don't understand why. Is it just another level of protection?
But where is, if you had to take a poll of the entire Maine Democratic Party, how do you think it falls? I mean, do you think most people are on the side of Mills, or do you think most people are on the side of you?
I think the more liberal element of the Democratic Party, which I am not part of, favors red flag laws. I think the more moderate Democrats do not. I think they think the yellow law, if done correctly, which wasn't done in the past, has been done since then, I think the yellow flag law is probably sufficient. I'm an anti-gun person. I just am. I admit it openly. If we could take everybody's guns away, I would be thrilled. I know that's anti-Second Amendment. But the point is this. I like any law that reduces the use of guns, I'm in favor of. However, that being said, I don't think it's popular in the state of Maine, and I believe in democracy. And if the majority of Mainers don't want it, that's the way it should be.
What about you, Garrett? Do you think this red flag law has a chance of passing? Do you feel worried that it could pass from where you
I think
sit?
it absolutely has a chance of passing. I think anything that
A
gets
good
on the ballot
chance.
does. No, I don't think it's going to pass. I think this is a bridge too far. And this is, I think, and I'm going to just speak on from the consensus of a lot of Republicans that I talk to. This is what happens when Republicans try to compromise. And we're seeing it in the legislature right now. The Republicans worked towards putting together a reasonable yellow flag law solution that we actually have seen work in many places. And when Republicans came to the table and tried to negotiate that, it's nope, we're going to go out and we're going to get the red flag on the ballot and we're going to put that to you too. And it's like we haven't even had the yellow flag law operating for a significant period of time. Like, why don't you look at that? The red flag law is way out of bounds. And I mean, I completely disagree with Ken. I'm not a gun aficionado. We have one for protection. I don't think we should be taking people's guns away. But
Temporarily, with a judge's approval, short term. Let's remember, you're not taking people's guns away.
But we can also talk about access to justice. And I know that you're a lawyer. I think that Maine has a serious access to justice issue, and getting that might sound easy. I think a lot of people realize it's probably not. And secondarily, getting that removed is another issue altogether.
We do have protection from abuse processes where you can get an ex parte order to protect your home and have a hearing within 2 weeks, and that's the law, and that works. So you can do that with the red flag law too.
Well, and I would just say this. I think the fact that the Democrat governor of the state of Maine is against this, the Maine State Police is against this, most Republicans and a lot of Democrats, I think Ken's right. I think we're going to find out at the ballot box, and I think it's going to fail.
Okay, we will leave it there. This will be a certainly interesting election season regarding red flag and voter ID as well. Yeah. All right, we will be back with more Political Brew. Stick with us. Welcome back to Political Brew. We are keeping things rolling. I am your host, Donovan Lynch. I'm joined by Republican analyst Garrett Mason, Democratic analyst Ken Altshuler. Big, juicy piece of news in the gubernatorial race. Okay. Hannah Pingree entering the Democratic field in the race for governor. She is the former Speaker of the Maine House, a former Mills administration official, and the daughter of Democratic Congresswoman Shelley Pingree. She launched her campaign this past week, touting her long experience in public service. Get this, University of Maine political scientist Mark Brewer told me Pingree is to the left of Mills and a little bit to the right of her mother. Also this week, Republican entrepreneur Owen McCarthy entered the race for the Blaine House on the Republican ticket. Okay, here's a question for you, Ken.
Yes, my cow.
Shenna Bellows is the Secretary of State under Mills. Pingree, former Mills administration official. If you're thinking who is the successor to Governor Mills, is it Pingree or is it Bellows?
Hannah going away.
Okay, and does that help her in the
Yes, well, she's going to get the nomination. As it stands today, I have no doubt she'll get the nomination. I really do. I think that people perceive Shenna, they'll remember her race against Susan Collins. She lost that race badly. I think people think, oh, she's just a career politician. Not that Hannah's not. You'd think Hannah's last name hurts her, but it doesn't, because the name recognition is critical in this case. I think she is the odds-on favorite to win. I think that, I don't think they connect Shenna with Janet Mills. They certainly should connect Hannah with Janet Mills.
And Garrett, I mean, do you agree with Ken that Pingree's entrance into this race makes her the natural front runner in the Democratic field?
I don't. I think Angus King III is the front runner.
Really?
And I
Do
do.
you?
Well, and all the crosstabs of that last poll we just saw. I mean, it's clear that people think that Angus King is running for governor again.
Well,
and
that's the problem with
I
name
don't listen. You know, that's the name recognition. He's got both parts of the name recognition. Hannah's only got one part. She's got the last name
Fair
Pingree.
enough.
And so I think in a ranked choice election, one of them is going to win. I think it's going to be Angus King right now, but we're pretty far out from that.
Well, the other issue, and you're right about name recognition. I hate to say this, but Angus King is male, and don't discount the misogyny that I think still exists today. I think Janet Mills, I think, was somewhat of an exception to the rule about a female getting elected. Governor's races are easier than certainly presidential races. But I think Angus King being a male, but we also have Troy Jackson, who's got the huge support of the unions.
I never underestimate Troy Jackson. I was the majority leader when when he was the minority leader. I never underestimate Troy.
And a question about that. In the Democratic field, you have a lot of different personalities. Troy Jackson, you watch him speak, he's swearing, he's raising his voice. You know, truly. Shenna Bellows, also very passionate. Hannah Pingree, well, but she, to me, seems like a policy wonk. You know, Mark Brewer, the political scientist, said she's more of a politician who is a workhorse, not a show horse.
But I think
Do you think that plays well?
Yes, I think she comes off calmer. And I think that, you know, the screaming and yelling that we see sometimes from the White House, I don't think that plays as well in Maine. And I think that a calmer demeanor, which Hannah has. Now, she's soft-spoken, and I think that's maybe not to her benefit. But I think when you compare her to Shenna or compare her to Troy, I think she looks better. Now, I'm not endorsing Hannah, and I don't know if I would vote for her. I'm not really thrilled by most of the candidates winning today, to be perfectly honest with you. And I'd probably be more interested in an independent candidate as we sit here today. But we'll have to see how it develops.
I think with, you know, I'm going to do some sandwich method. Hannah Pingree is a lovely person. Like, you know, I've worked with her over the years. She really is a wonderful person. But, you know, one of the things that I think she did wrong on her launch speech was she did exactly what Joe Biden did that cost them the election. And it was she went after MAGA Republicans and extremists in the Republican
That's
Party.
a mistake.
And it's, you know what, when you're trying to pull together a coalition, I can't help but remind Speaker Pingree and others in the Democrat Party that you might not like people that vote for Donald Trump, but they're 40% of the people in this state. And that, I think, demeaning people that way is just not appropriate.
But some polling, you know, when Trump first got into office on the Democratic side suggested that Democrats who are outspoken and stood up to Trump polled better with Democratic voters.
So
I mean,
the
question, well, I mean, in the primary, does she have to do this and message this way to
Very
win
good
her
point.
voters?
And remember, Janet Mills has got a huge amount of positive attention for standing up to Donald Trump.
But she didn't demean people in the process. She
agree.
might have fought Trump, but she didn't say, I don't like the people that
But
vote for
Donovan's
him.
point is the primary. If you got to get through a primary before you're the candidate, and I don't think it really matters yet what happens in the general election. To win the Democratic nominee, you go after Donald Trump. I don't think that's a negative to her in the primary, maybe in the general election.
All right, we will leave it there. One more part of our show coming up. Stick with us. Political Brew will continue. Welcome to your last cup of Political Brew. I'm your host, Donovan Lynch. I'm joined by Garrett Mason, Republican analyst, Ken Altshuler, Democratic analyst. A lot to talk about this week so far. We've covered a lot of ground, but still there is more to go. The question over whether transgender athletes should be able to compete in women's and girls sports came up for debate in front of the legislature this past week. In the Senate Thursday night, Democrats spoke against a bill to stop trans athletes from playing in girls sports, calling it harmful to trans youth. Republicans shot back, arguing the legislation is meant to protect girls and give them a platform to thrive in athletics. But most notably about this Thursday night debate, Republican Senator Rick Bennett gave a passionate floor speech, joining Democrats in shooting down the bill, saying he's saddened by what he sees as an effort to turn away from the better angels of our nature. This fascinated me, Garrett and Ken, and I want to go to you first, Ken. This is an issue that previous reporting would suggest Democrats were actually, some were joining Republicans. Having a Republican join Democrats, do you think that cools any will among Democrats to say, yeah, let's ban trans athletes from women's sports if they look and see, well, a Republican is against that?
I do think it makes Democrats who believe, and it's not a great issue for Democrats. And Democrats have not handled it well, even though morally and ethically, it's the right stand to take. From a political point of view, it's not popular across the country. And it'd be so easy for them to say, look, let's have a co-ed sport for boys and girls, let girls be on girls and boys be on boys, and let's give a place for trans athletes to compete. That's the smart solution to it. But I'll tell you, Rick Bennett saying what he said, he may be the first Republican I could support for governor. I mean, I was so impressed with his non-traditional stand and his beautiful speech about it. It was really incredible. And I have said before, this is a solution without a problem. But it is a problem to the Democrats politically. And it's something they got to get rid of because it's going to resonate in elections across the country.
What does this mean for the Republicans politically if you have a Republican who's taking a stance that is, frankly, to the left of some Democrats?
No, I think it just echoes what we've always said about the GOP is we're a big tent party, and that there's diversity of thought in our party. Unlike what I would say is the party opposite. But, I think a couple of things about this. As far as, a solution without a problem, Ken and I have debated this issue forever now. I completely disagree. There's over 900 girls who have been disenfranchised and have lost championships to a trans athlete across the country. There's also been multiple people who have been hurt by trans athletes because they're just dominantly superior in the large majority of cases. So, this is a common sense measure, but in my opinion, I agree with Ken in that this is a loser issue. This is a loser issue for Democrats. This is an 80-20 issue. I think it's a little less than that in Maine. It might be like a 70-30 issue. But this is a common sense measure. This is a problem. It is, the Democrats would be wise to just vote for this and go with it. But I guess they won't. So I'm sure we'll remind people of that when it comes time for election.
I guess, Garrett, you say broad tent party, but how much does a Republican joining Democrats hurt the Republicans' effort? And frankly, people thought this effort may be successful, and it still might. We don't know the end result of all the votes, but how much does this hurt this effort by Republicans?
I don't think it hurts. I don't think it hurts the effort at all. I think when you really look at this issue, Rick Bennett is one of those characters in Maine politics who you really don't know where he's going to go next. Rick Bennett cast a ballot for Donald Trump and gave a speech on the floor of the Electoral College decrying Donald Trump saving the common man. So, Rick Bennett is an incredible orator. Rick Bennett has taken positions all over the place. You never really know where he's going to come from. Apparently, he spoke to his daughter, and his daughter got to, convinced him otherwise.
Ken, you brought this up. You'd vote for him for governor. Do you think this gives him a platform to run for governor? Do you think he will run for governor? And how successful would that bid be by Senator Rick Bennett?
I'm not a one-issue person, so I wouldn't just vote for him for this one issue. I do think that it gives people pause that this is a more independent maverick Republican. Okay, so I do think it gives him some great name recognition if he wishes to run. I don't think it gets him the nomination. I think we've seen that moderate Republicans don't always, Peter Mills is a great person who comes to mind who's a moderate Republican, never really generated a lot of success in the primaries. So I don't think he necessarily gets the Republican nomination because of this, but there's other things that would get him a step up on other candidates because he's showing diversity of opinion.
And what about as an independent? Do you think that has legs?
Winning as an independent is not easy, but that is not a bad path for him to choose. I think that may be a more successful path, particularly if he runs for the primary and loses and then runs as an independent. I think I had some success.
Okay, before we get to winners and losers, really quick, what do you both think of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee moving forward with a cigarette tax increase of $1.50 a pack when the governor wanted to increase it by $1 a pack? Really quick, Ken, you first.
I don't think anybody cares if cigarettes get taxed. I don't think people care about that. Even though he has the word tax, I don't think people care.
Republicans call it unfairly borne by poor people. What do you think?
I completely agree. It's completely borne by poor people, and you're taxing somebody on something that they're addicted to. I think it's reprehensible.
Okay, let's go to winners and losers. That was a rapid fire round. Winners and losers, Garrett.
The winner is my dad. Rick Mason. He's a state representative in the legislature. I'm very proud of him. He did a great job raising me and my sister. We love him very much, and so he's my winner this week for Father's Day. If I had to pick a loser, it's the Maine state taxpayer. It's looking like, and we'll see what happens next week, that we're going to see a big increase. And my question to Democrats is, how much of our money is enough? And the budget has almost been doubled since Janet Mills has been in office. So my loser is the Maine taxpayer.
Ken?
So, Winter, and I hate to say this out of a tragedy, but there was a sole survivor of the Indian plane crash that walked out unscathed. If anybody's a winner, it's him, and how that happened is absolutely a miracle. Loser, the egocentric president who's throwing himself a multi-million-dollar birthday party under the guise of celebrating the Army. You want to take that $45 million, you can house and feed the 32,000 veterans who are homeless for 5 months with that money. Shame on him, and shame on us letting him do that.
All right. Well, that has been another edition of Political Brew. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for joining me. Have a great week.